Hi friends, today we are going to learn a detailed explanation of the chapter Last Lesson by Alphonse Daudet. Alphonse Daudet is a French novelist. This story, Last Lesson, is about the Franco-Persian War in 1870 to 1871. France was defeated by Persia, led by Bismarck, Germany, Poland, and parts of Austria. In this story, the French districts of Alsace and Lorraine have passed into Persian hands. Now, we are going into the story. I started for school very late that morning and was in great dread of scolding. Dread of scolding means scared of scolding, especially because M. Hamel has said that he would question us on participles. Participles means it is a kind of a grammar. It is a part of grammar, and I did not know the first word about them. For a moment, I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. It was so warm, so bright. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and in the open field back of the sawmill, the Persian soldiers were drilling. It was all much more tempting than the role for participle, but I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. When I passed the town hall, there was crowd in front of the bulletin board. Now, what is bulletin board? Bulletin board is a board where a lot of news, current news about their country is displayed. For the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. The lost battle, the draft, the order of the commanding officer, and I thought to myself, without stopping, what can be the matter now? Then, as I hurried by as fast as I could go, the blacksmith watcher who was there with his apprentice reading the bulletin called after me. Don't go so fast, Bub. You will get to your school in plenty of time. These words were said in a sarcastic tone, okay? I thought he was making fun of me and reached M. Hamel's little garden all out of breath. Usually, when school began, there was a great bustle which could be heard out in the street. The opening and closing of desks, lessons repeated in unison, very loud, with our hands over our ears to understand better, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. But now it was also still. I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. But of course, that day everything had to be as quiet as Sunday morning. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places, and M. Hamels walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how I blushed and how frightened I was, but nothing happened. And M. Hamel saw me and said very kindly, "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We are beginning without you." I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap all embroidered that he never wore except on the inspection and prize days. Here the two questions are: the two occasions where M. Hamel wear his green coat. These are the special occasions of inspection day and the prize day. And here the France was very felt it very strange on that day, because usually when he comes late, Mr. Hamel doesn't let him in, but that day Mr. Hamel's behavior was strange, because he Mr. Hamels, without making any, without being angry to France, he made him sit in the class and showed politeness towards France. But the thing that surprised me most was the backbenches that were always empty, the village people sitting quietly like ourselves. Old Hauser and his three coned hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, several other besides. Who were the people who were sitting in the back? The first one, the old Hauser, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several others. Everybody looked sad, and Hauser had bought an old primer thumbed at the edges, and he held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. While I was wondering about it all, Mr. Hamill moved his chair and, in the same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me, said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in schools of Alsace and Lorraine. You know, Alsace and Lorraine are the two districts in this country. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive." What a thunderclap these words were to me. For this question, what a thunderclap these words were to me. The answer will be from here, my children. This is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine, and the new master comes tomorrow. And I want to be attentive. This is the answer. And oh, the brushes. That was what they had put up on the town hall. Franz thought. My last French lesson? Why, I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn any more. I must stop there then. How sorry I was for not learning any lessons, for seeking bird's egg or going sliding on the Saar. My books that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry, my grammar and my history of the saints were all friends now that I couldn't give up. And M. Hamels too, the idea that he was going, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. Poor man. It was in honor of this last lesson that he put on his fine Sunday clothes. Why did he, Mr. Hamels, wear Sunday clothes? Answer is, in honor of his last lesson, he wear his Sunday clothes. I understood why the old men of the village were sitting in the back benches of the room. It was because they were sorry too. They too had not gone to school more. It was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service and showing their respect for the country that was there no more. While I was thinking of all this, I heard my name called. It was my turn to recite. What would I have not given to be able to say the dreadful rule for past participle, although very loud and clear without one mistake? But I got mixed up with the first word and stood there, holding on my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look up. I heard M. Hamel saying to me, "I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. See how it is. Every day we have said to ourselves, Bah, I have plenty of time. I will learn it tomorrow. And now you see where have come out, and the great trouble with Elsa, she puts off learning till tomorrow. Now those fellows out there have the right to say to you how it is. You pretend to be Frenchmen, and yet you can neither speak nor write your language. But you are not the worst, poor little Franz. We all a great deal to approach ourselves. Your parents are not anxious enough to have you learn. They prefer you to put you to work on a farm or at mill, so have as to have a little more money. And I have been to blame also. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? And when I wanted to go fishing, did not I just give you a holiday? Then, from one thing to another, Mr. Hamill went on to talk of the French language, saying it is one of the most beautiful languages in the world, the clearest, most logical. Then we must guard it among ourselves and never forget it. What did Mr. Hamel say about French language? This is the answer from here. And because when people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language as if it is they had the key to their prison. Then he opened a grammar and read our lesson, and I was amazed to see how well I understood it. All he said seemed so easy. I think too that I had never listened so carefully. And then he never explained everything with so much patience. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away to all our heads at one stroke. And after the grammar, we had lessons in writing. That day Hamel had a new copies for us, written in beautiful round hand. France Alsec, France Alsec. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the school room, hung from the road at the top of our head. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. The only sound that was scratching on the pens over the paper. Once some tills flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest one, who worked right on the transing their fish hooks as if it was French too. On the roof, the pigeon cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? Why did Mr. Young Franz thought this? Because here, yeah, in this chapter, this all the school children are in the districts of Alsace and Lorraine. The Persians had made it mandatory to teach, to not to teach French as their language. Instead, mm, made them learn German. So here the pigeons are compared to these young children. And could means to uh, teach them in German. Will the Germans make them mandatory for even small children to learn the German language without learning their own mother tongue French language? So, whenever I looked upon from my writings, I saw M. Hamel sitting motionless in his chair, gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in the little schoolroom. Fancy, for 40 years he had been there in the same place, with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him. Just like that, only the desks, the benches had been worn smooth, and the walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hopu vine that had planted himself twinned upon the windows to the roof. How it must have broken to his heart to leave it all, poor man, to his fear. His sisters moving away in the room above, packing their trucks, for they must have leave the country next day. But he had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. After writing, we had a lesson in the history, and then the baby standard there, ba, bee, bo, boo, down there at the back of the room. Old Hoiser had put on his spectacles and holding his primer in both hands, spelled it with them. You could see that he too was crying. His voice trembled with emotion, and it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. And how well I remember it, that last lesson. All at once the church clock struck 12, and the angelus. At the same moment, the trumpets of Persian returning from drill sounded under our windows, and M. Hamel stood up very pale in his chair. I never saw him look so tall. What happened when the clock struck 12? At this, here is answer. At the same moment, the trumpets of the Persian returning from drill sounded under our windows. M. Hamill stood very pale in his chair. I never saw him look so tall. My friends, said he, I. But something choked him. He couldn't go on. Then he turned to his blackboard. He took a piece of chalk and, bearing on with all his might, he wrote on large as he could, Viva la France, which means long live France. What did M. Hamels wrote on the blackboard on that day, last day? The answer is Viva la France, which means long live France. Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and without a word, he made a gesture to us with his head. School is dismissed. You may go.